The child vanished at sunset, not in the dead of night, not beneath a screaming moon, but in that fragile moment when daylight weakens and shadows learn how to stretch, when the world hesitates between safety and darkness. He was last seen walking home along the old road, his silhouette long against the golden hills. A neighbor waved. The child waved back. Then the sun dipped below the trees, and the road was empty. No scream, no struggle, no footprints beyond the bend. By the time night arrived, the village already knew. They felt in the air, cold and familiar, the same weight their grandparents once described in whispers, the same silence that pressed too close to the windows. Dogs refused to bark. Candles burned low for no reason. And then the name returned. Dracula. They swore they saw him standing on the ridge above the village, tall, unmoving, watching as if he had never left. They said the forest remembered him. They said the dark had opened its eyes again. The elders insisted it was impossible. The stories were old. The fear was older. But legends do not return without purpose. And whatever took the child at sunset did not hide its presence. It wanted the village to remember. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss our cinematic stories of suspense and horror. Sunset had always been the village's safest hour. It was a time when chores ended, doors opened, and voices carried easily across the fields. Children were called home by name, and the world felt visible, accountable. Night, with its dangers and stories, still waited its turn. That was why no one panicked at first. The boy's name was Luca, and he was late by only a few minutes. His mother stood at the threshold of their cottage, wiping her hands on her apron, watching the road curve past the wheat fields. The sky glowed amber and rose, the sun slipping slowly behind the hills. Luca loved this hour. He always lingered, dragging his feet, kicking stones, pretending the road was longer than it was. "Luca!" she called, smiling despite herself. No answer. She waited, counted to 10, then 20. The smile faded. A neighbor passed by, basket under her arm. "Still not home?" she asked lightly. "Any moment," Luca's mother replied, though something had already tightened in her chest. Minutes stretched. The sky dimmed. When Luca did not appear, the road began to look unfamiliar, longer, emptier, too straight. His mother stepped onto it, scanning the path, the ditches, the edges where children sometimes wandered chasing insects or skipping stones. "Luca?" she called again, louder now. Still nothing. By the time the church bell rang for evening prayer, the village had noticed. Men left their suppers untouched. Women gathered shawls. Someone lit a lantern, even though there was still light enough to see. They spread out along the road, calling his name, checking the fields, the creek, the old stone wall where children liked to sit and watch the sun fall. They found his footprints first. Small, clear, pressed into the dirt of the path. They followed them easily, too easily. The prints led toward the old forest trail, the one no one used anymore. Trees crowded close there, branches leaning inward, as if the path were something the woods wished to reclaim. The footprints stopped, not scattered, not disturbed, just ended, as if Luca had stepped off the world. A murmur rippled through the group. "That's not possible," someone whispered. A lantern was raised higher, its light cutting across the ground, searching for signs of a struggle. There were none. No dragged earth, no broken branches, no second set of footprints. Only the forest, watching quietly. A cold breeze moved through the trees, though the air had been warm moments before. Leaves shivered without sound. And then someone said it. "Do you feel that?" Heads turned, faces paled. It was not fear yet. It was recognition. The elders arrived last, moving slower, heavier. They did not rush to the trail. They stood back, eyes narrowed, as if listening to something the others could not hear. One of them crossed himself. "No," he muttered. "It can't be." "What?" Luca's mother demanded, panic finally breaking free. "What do you mean it can't be?" The old man did not answer her. He stared at the trees, at the darkening line where forest met sky. "We were wrong," he said instead. "We thought time had buried him." "Buried who?" someone asked. The old man swallowed. "Dracula." The name fell into the group like a stone into water. Immediate protest followed. Angry, desperate, disbelieving. That's a story. A warning tale. Something to scare children indoors. But no one laughed, because the forest had gone still. No birds. No insects. No wind, as if it were holding its breath. A young man pointed suddenly. "There," he said, voice shaking, on the ridge above the trees, where the last light of the sun bled into shadow, a figure stood, tall, perfectly still, too still. No features could be made out, only a silhouette against the dying sky. But everyone felt it at once, the weight of being observed. The figure did not move. It did not need to. As darkness crept upward from the forest floor, the silhouette faded, not retreating, but blending, becoming part of the night itself. Someone screamed then. Luca's mother fell to her knees, the road tilting beneath her. The villagers stood frozen, lanterns trembling in their hands, staring at the place where the child's footprints ended. Sunset had failed them, and as night finally claimed the sky, one terrible truth settled over the village. Whatever had taken the child had not waited for darkness. It had returned at sunset, because it no longer feared the light. Night sealed the village like a lid. Doors were barred, windows shuttered. Candles burned in every home, their flames restless, bending as if a breath moved through rooms where no wind should exist. No one slept. They listened instead to the creak of wood, to distant dogs whining, to the forest pressing closer in sound and shadow. Luca's mother sat at the table with a scarf clenched in her hands. It still smelled faintly of smoke and grass. Every few minutes she rose, pacing, then sat again, as if movement alone might summon him back. Outside, the elders gathered in the church. The building had stood for centuries, its stones thick with prayers and confessions. Tonight, those stones felt thin. The air inside was cold, and the candles lining the altar cast long, warped shadows across the walls. "He never crossed the threshold before," said Father Andre, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Not like this." "He doesn't need to any more," replied old Tomas, leaning heavily on his cane. "That's what the stories warned us about. When he stops asking permission, it means we failed." They spoke the name carefully now, as if volume itself could summon attention. Dracula. Generations ago, the village had learned the rules. They had sealed windows at night. They had blessed doorways. They had kept children indoors before dusk. And slowly, too slowly, the visit stopped. The stories thinned. Fear faded into folklore, until sunset stole a child. "What do we do?" asked a woman whose hand shook too badly to stay folded. "We can't fight him." "We don't fight him," Tomas said. "We endure. We hide. And we pray he takes no more." Father Andre looked up sharply. "That is not enough." All eyes turned to him. "He chose a child," the priest continued. "Not at random. He never does, which means he's testing us, watching how we respond." A murmur of unease passed through the group. Testing. Outside the church, the wind rose suddenly, rattling the doors. Candles flickered violently, several guttering out at once. In Luca's home, his mother heard footsteps on the road. She rushed to the window, heart hammering. For one desperate second, she imagined a small silhouette running toward the door, breathless and laughing, apologizing for being late. Instead, she saw nothing, only the moonlit road, empty, pale, stretching past the wheat fields and into the forest. Then she noticed something else, a shape at the edge of the light. Not a man, not an animal. It was taller than the fence, darker than the night around it, standing where the road bent toward the trees. It did not move, yet it felt closer each time she blinked. Her breath fogged the glass. "Go away," she whispered. The shape tilted its head, slowly, as if listening. She staggered back from the window, knocking over a chair. When she looked again, the road was empty, but the cold remained. Elsewhere in the village, others saw signs they could not explain. A child woke screaming. insisting someone had whispered her name from beneath the floorboards. A man found his barn door open, claw marks carved deep into the wood. An old woman swore her mirror showed a figure standing behind her until she turned and found herself alone. By midnight, the truth was unavoidable. Dracula was not passing through. He was settling in. At the edge of the forest, beyond the lantern's reach, something moved among the trees. Branches bent without sound. Shadows slid where no bodies walked. And somewhere deeper still, where roots nodded and moonlight failed, Luca opened his eyes. He was not afraid. That was the strangest part. The ground beneath him was cold stone. The air smelled of earth and iron. Above him, a ceiling arched like ribs, and red light pulsed faintly, as if the dark itself had a heartbeat. A presence filled the space. You walked alone, a voice said, not loud, not cruel, but ancient and patient. That matters. Luca tried to speak. His throat tightened. You were not taken, the voice continued. You were noticed. A pale hand entered his vision, fingers long and still, stopping inches from his face. Your village forgot, the voice said softly. You will help them remember. Back in the village, a bell began to ring. No one had pulled the rope. The sound rolled through the night, heavy and slow, each toll sinking deeper than the last. And with every echo, the villagers understood. The first night had only been a warning. The choosing had already begun. Morning arrived without warmth. A thin, colorless light crept over the village, revealing a place that looked unchanged, yet felt irreversibly altered. Doors opened cautiously. Faces appeared in windows, pale and sleepless. No one spoke at first, as if words themselves might invite something back. The bell had stopped ringing sometime before dawn. No one remembered hearing it end. Father Andre walked the streets with a small group of villagers, blessing doorways, pressing holy water into trembling palms, murmuring prayers older than the church itself. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the ground resisted being crossed. At the edge of the village, they found the first mark. The wheat near the forest had been pressed flat in a perfect circle, the stalks bent but unbroken. At its center lay Luca's shoe, clean, dry, placed carefully. Luca's mother fell to her knees when she saw it. She did not scream. She simply rocked back and forth, clutching the small shoe to her chest, whispering his name as though repetition alone could pull him back through the trees. Tomas stared at the circle, his jaw tight. He wanted us to find this. Yes, Father Andre said, and he wanted us to come together to see it. The forest loomed beyond the flattened wheat, dark even in daylight. The trees stood too still, their branches tangled like interlocked fingers. No bird sang. No insects hummed. The village remembered then, fragments surfacing like bodies from deep water. Stories of signs. Stories of offerings. Stories of children who were not killed, but changed. Inside the church, the elders argued in low, urgent voices. He feeds on fear, one said. We should stay calm. He feeds on blood, another replied. We should leave. And go where? Tomas snapped. He follows roads, rivers, people. Father Andre stood apart, staring at the altar. The candles he had lit earlier burned low already, wax spilling like pale tears. He hasn't crossed the village line, the priest said finally. Not yet. A hush fell. That means the rules still matter, he continued. Or at least, he wants us to think they do. What rules? Someone asked. We don't even remember them all. Father Andre turned, his face drawn. Then we learned quickly. By afternoon, strange things began to happen. Milk soured within minutes of being drawn. Mirrors clouded no matter how much they were wiped. Children complained of headaches and dreams they could not explain. Dreams of red eyes watching from far away, patient and unblinking. And always, the forest seemed closer. That evening, as the sun began its descent, Father Andre ordered every child indoors. Doors were locked, curtains drawn, lamps lit early. Still, the shadows lengthened. At the exact moment the sun touched the horizon, a scream cut through the village. It came from the edge of the square. They found the boy standing alone, shaking, his eyes wide and unfocused. He pointed toward the forest with a trembling hand. "He was there," the boy whispered, "just standing, smiling." "Who?" Father Andre asked, though he already knew. "The tall man," the boy said. "He asked me if I wanted to see Luca." The villagers pulled the boy inside, bolting the door behind them. Outside, the last light vanished, and night claimed the sky with frightening speed. Deep within the forest, Luca sat on a stone step, his feet dangling above darkness. He no longer cried. Time felt different here, stretched and folded, like a dream that refused to end. The cold no longer bothered him. Neither did hunger. Dracula stood nearby, tall and still, his pale face catching what little light existed. His eyes glowed softly, not with rage, but with focus. "You wonder why you are here," Dracula said. Luca nodded. "You think I take children because they are easy," the vampire continued. "But ease is boring. I choose those who notice the dark and step toward it." He knelt, bringing his eyes level with Luca's. "You heard the stories," Dracula said, "but you walk alone anyway." Luca swallowed. "I wasn't scared." A thin smile touched Dracula's lips. "No," he agreed, "you weren't." Back in the village, Father Andre closed the church doors as night fully fell. "We have until the next sunset," he said to those gathered inside. "After that, he will come closer." The candles flickered violently, as if in response. Outside, somewhere beyond the fields, a presence watched the village lights ignite one by one. Patient, certain, the signs had been given, and soon the price of forgetting would be collected. The fourth night arrived heavier than the others. Clouds smothered the moon, turning the sky into a lid of black stone. The village lights burned low, as if afraid to draw attention. No laughter, no music. Even the dogs had gone silent, crawling beneath porches and refusing to emerge. Father Andre ordered the church bells bound with rope. "They must not ring," he said. "Not unless we choose it." No one argued. At dusk, the elders completed the old preparations, those half-remembered rituals passed down in fragments. Salt lines were drawn across thresholds. Rowan branches were nailed above doors. Every window faced inward, curtains tight, mirrors covered. And still, the cold found its way inside. As the sun vanished, the forest exhaled. It was subtle at first, a sigh through branches, a low shifting sound like breath through ribs. Leaves trembled without wind. Roots pressed against soil, as if something massive had turned in its sleep. From the edge of the fields, a figure emerged. Dracula did not rush. He walked, each step deliberate, each movement smooth and unhurried, his long coat barely stirring as he crossed the flattened wheat circle where Luca's shoe had been found. He stopped there, tilting his head, listening to the village. Its heartbeats, its prayers, its fear. Lights flickered. Inside her home, Luca's mother felt a pressure in her chest, as though invisible hands had closed around her lungs. She clutched the table, gasping, tears streaming without sound. "He's here," she whispered. Across the village, others felt it too. The certainty, not suspicion, not imagination. Presence. At the church. Father Andre stood at the door with Tomas beside him, both holding candles that burned blue at the edges. "He's closer than before," Tomas said. "He's testing the line." Father Andre nodded. "Or daring us to cross it." A knock sounded. 3 slow taps. Would met knuckle with impossible calm. Every candle in the church guttered. No one moved. The knock came again. Not loud, not violent. Patient. "He can't enter," someone whispered. "Not unless invited." Dracula's voice slipped through the door like smoke. "You taught your children the stories," he said softly, "but you stopped believing them." Father Andre swallowed. "Leave us." A pause, then a faint chuckle. "You already invited me when you forgot." The air grew colder. Frost traced the edges of the door, spreading like veins. In the forest, deeper than any path, Luca stood beside Dracula at the mouth of a hollow tree. Red light pulsed within, slow and steady. "You hear them," Dracula said. Calling you home. Luca nodded. Do you miss them? Luca hesitated. I miss my mother. Dracula's expression did not change, but his eyes sharpened. Love, he said. That is why you were chosen. He gestured toward the glowing hollow. This is where the forest remembers, where promises are kept. Luca felt something move beneath his feet, like roots shifting into new shapes. Back at the church, the knock stopped. Silence pressed in. Then came the screams. From the far side of the village, a child's voice cried out, sharp, terrified, unmistakably close. Father Andre tore open the church doors. Cold air slammed into them. Down the road, near the old well, shadows twisted unnaturally. A child stood frozen in place, staring at something towering over him. Dracula. He had crossed the line. The villagers rushed forward, shouting prayers, holding crosses high. The air screamed as symbols burned against something ancient. Dracula turned slowly. His eyes glowed brighter now, red cutting through the darkness. The child beside him collapsed to the ground, unharmed but unconscious. I warned you, Dracula said calmly. I do not take without reason. Father Andre stepped forward, voice shaking but firm. Then tell us the reason. Dracula's gaze swept the village. You forgot the cost of safety. You forgot the rules. And you forgot the children. He gestured toward the forest. One is already crossed. The villagers froze. You have until dawn, Dracula continued. Decide whether you remember who you are or whether the forest must remind you. With that, he dissolved backward into shadow, the night swallowing him whole. The child on the ground stirred, sobbing. At the forest's edge, Luca felt the pull strengthen, roots tightening, light deepening, the path closing behind him. Dracula's voice echoed softly in his ear. By morning, he said, the village will choose. And somewhere between heartbeats, the forest began to move closer still. No one slept. The village existed in a suspended state between terror and prayer, counting breaths instead of minutes. Dawn felt impossibly far away, as if the night itself had decided to linger, stretching, savoring the fear held. Father Andre gathered the elders once more inside the church. The doors remained open now, as if closing them would be an admission of weakness. Cold air flowed freely, carrying the smell of damp earth and something older, iron and moss and memory. He crossed the boundary. Tomas said, his voice hoarse. That means the rules have changed. No, Father Andre replied. It means the rules still apply, but only if we do. A murmur spread. What does he want? A woman asked. Another child? Father Andre shook his head slowly. He already has one. The words settled heavily. Luca, his name was not spoken, but everyone felt it. Then what is the choice? Tomas demanded. The priest closed his eyes. To remember who we were, or to remain who we have become. Silence followed. The old records were brought out. Pages yellowed, edges crumbling, written in a hand few could still read. They spoke of guardianship, not resistance. Of vigilance, not violence. Of villages that survived not by confronting Dracula, but by honoring the balance between light and dark. There was always a watcher, Father Andre read aloud. Someone chosen to stand between. A sacrifice, someone whispered. A guardian, the priest corrected. One who walks the line so others do not have to. Outside, the wind shifted. In the forest, Luca stood at the threshold of the hollow, the red light pulsing brighter now. The roots beneath his feet had risen, curling gently around his ankles, not restraining him, but guiding him, as if asking permission. Dracula watched him carefully. You feel it, the vampire said. The pull, the fear, the love. Luca nodded. They're scared. Yes, Dracula replied. Fear is honest. Will they forget again? Luca asked. Dracula's lips pressed into a thin line. They always do. Eventually. Luca looked back toward the village, where faint light still burned. Then why choose me? Dracula knelt, his towering presence folding down until his eyes were level with the boy's. Because you would not, he said. You would remember. In the church, a decision took shape, slow, painful, inevitable. "We must restore the watch," Thomas said, "before dawn." "And if we don't?" someone asked. Father Andre looked toward the forest. "Then the forest will take more than one." A sob broke the silence. Luca's mother stood at the back of the church, her face hollow but her eyes burning with fierce clarity. "Take me," she said. "If someone must stand between, take me instead." The priest's voice cracked. "It doesn't work that way." "Why?" she demanded. "Why, my child?" Father Andre met her gaze. "Because he was brave when we were careless." Outside, a sound rolled through the village. Not a roar, not a scream, but the slow cracking of wood as trees bent closer, their shadows spilling across the fields. Time was running out. In the forest, Dracula straightened. "The choice is being made," he said. "Do you feel it?" Luca did, a tightening in his chest, a warmth spreading through the cold. "I don't want them to be afraid anymore," Luca said quietly. Dracula regarded him for a long moment. "Then you understand the cost." He extended a hand, not threatening, not urgent, an invitation. Back in the village, Father Andre stepped into the square as the first gray hint of dawn brushed the horizon. "We remember," he said aloud, his voice carrying. "We will keep watch. We will teach our children. We will not look away again." The forest responded. The wind stilled. Shadows paused. At the edge of the trees, Dracula raised his head, eyes fixed on the coming light. "So," he murmured, "the village chooses to remember." Luca took a breath and stepped forward. As dawn crept closer, the line between forest and village blurred, and the final consequence of it getting prepared to reveal itself. The sun was rising, and something ancient was about to be bound once more. The first light of dawn touched the forest like a hesitant hand. It did not banish the darkness all at once. Instead, it revealed it layer by layer, showing twisted roots, ancient stones, and shadows that resisted being named. The village watched from a distance, breath held, as if the sunrise itself might break if observed too closely. At the forest's edge, Dracula stood unmoving. The rising sun painted the horizon in pale gold, but it did not warm him. His shadow stretched backward into the trees, long and absolute, tethered to something deeper than light. Luca stood beside him. The boy felt different now, not weaker, not stronger, but anchored. The forest no longer pressed against him. It listened. The red pulse within the hollow slowed, steadying like a heart finding its rhythm. "You understand what happens next," Dracula said quietly. Luca nodded. "If you cross back," Dracula continued, "the village will remember for a time. They always do, but the forgetting will return." "And if I stay?" Luca asked. Dracula's eyes lifted toward the village lights flickering in the dawn. "Then the remembering becomes part of the land." Silence followed. In the village square, Father Andre stepped forward, the sun outlining his thin frame. He raised his hands, not in command, but in acceptance. "We are ready," he said aloud, his voice trembling. "We will keep watch." The forest shifted. Roots tightened into patterns older than roads. Stones rose subtly, forming a ring around the hollow. The air thickened, heavy with consequence. Luca turned toward the village one last time. He saw his mother at the front of the crowd. Her face was streaked with tears, but she did not cry out. She understood now, understood the weight of what was being offered and the courage it required. She pressed her hand to her heart. Luca did the same. Dracula knelt, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder, gentle, reverent. "You were chosen because you saw," he said. "Not because you were small, but because you were brave." The sun crested the hills. Light spilled into the forest, catching Dracula's face. For the first time, something like weariness crossed his features. "Remember this," he said to the village, his voice carrying without effort. "I am not the beginning of your fear. I am what comes when you stop guarding what matters." With that, he stepped backward, not into flame, not into ash, into shadow. The forest folded around him, swallowing his form until only the trees remained, silent, watchful, changed. Luca felt the ground rise beneath his feet, roots lifting him gently, placing him at the center of the ring. The red glow dimmed, then softened into a warm, steady light that no longer frightened him. The forest had accepted its guardian. In the village, the cold lifted. Birds sang, hesitant at first, then confident. The air warmed. The oppressive weight that had pressed on chest for days finally released. Father Andre fell to his knees. So did many others. They did not cheer. They did not celebrate. They remembered. Years passed. The village endured. Children were called home before sunset. Stories were told, not as myths, but as warnings wrapped in care. The forest was respected. Boundaries were honored. And sometimes at dusk, when the light faded just so, villagers swore they saw a small figure standing among the trees, watching, waiting, keeping the balance. They never called out. They never approached, because some protections must remain unseen to endure. And deep within the forest, where roots and memory intertwined, Dracula watched as well, distant now, restrained, his presence bound to vigilance rather than hunger. The child had vanished at sunset, but the village had been given something far more difficult than relief. It had been given responsibility. And as long as they remembered, the darkness would remain where it belonged, waiting, watching, and never crossing the line again.